Hello, everyone. Welcome to Family Matters. Today's topic is learn 7 key brain healthy habits that you can incorporate into your daily routine today to achieve overall wellness. We are excited to having you join today. For this episode, we're joined by Dr. William Mansbach, the founder and CEO of Mansbach Health Tools, LLC, which supports the BCAT Research Center. He is the Chief Executive Officer and President of Counterpoint Health Services, an interprofessional behavioral healthcare company specializing in geriatrics and dementia care. And he's authored many books, one in particular called Brain Health as You Age. Welcome, Dr. Mansbach.
Abby, it's great to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Can you explain a little bit about your role at Counterpoint Health Services and the Brain Health and Psychiatry Center? And also just tell us a little bit about what services they provide.
I'm happy to do that. Counterpoint is a medical group that specializes in geriatric behavioral health and memory care. A lot of the work by providers at Counterpoint is done in nursing homes and senior living communities. We have outpatient clinic-based care as well. And I guess like so many, Abby, we do more and more telehealth or telemedicine. But our focus is really on people who are 50 and older. So I guess it's not just geriatrics, who have behavioral health issues, and particularly those who want to protect their brain health as they age. And we take care of a lot of people with dementia and pre-dementia syndromes as well.
So with your experience and background, is that what led to the development of the book on brain health?
It did. You know, one of the challenges, I think, for those of us who provide this kind of care is, I mean, on one hand, the information can be very technical, Abby. You know, what is Alzheimer's disease? How does it lead to dementia? What can be done about it? What medications are effective, if any? What non-pharmacologic interventions can be done, and so forth. And I think it's very easy for providers to talk in terms that are very difficult for most people to understand who don't do this work all the time. The ask from the publisher was to write a book, not for our colleagues, really, but for everyday people who experience changes in their brain health, and particularly those who have dementia. And Abby, I think one of the audiences that they wanted us to speak to would be sort of the sandwich generation, folks who, you know, they may have kids at home, maybe not, but they have aging parents who are beginning to develop dementia. So how can those folks protect their brain as they age so that when they are in their 80s, 90s, and perhaps hundreds, they don't develop cognitive impairment?
Thank you for that description. So when we think about the term brain health, the World Health Organization defines the term as the state of brain functioning across cognitive, sensory, social, emotional, behavioral, and motor domains, allowing a person to realize their full potential over the life course, irrespective of the presence or absence of disorders. In your experience, would you add anything to this definition, or would you care to explain anything in that definition a little bit further?
I'm sure it's a great academic definition. I'm not sure I really know what it means, and I bet most people probably don't know what it means. When I think about brain health, I think about it as a verb, not really as a noun. I think about it in this way, Abby. What can we do as individuals to protect our brain as we age? What are brain healthy habits? So whether or not you already have an ongoing disease or illness that can produce problems in memory, there are certain things that you can do every day to protect your brain and get the most out of it. So maybe we should think about the difference between negative and positive brain health, right? Positive brain health would be, regardless of where you are, just trying to do things that are going to improve your cognition now and in the future.
So that's a much more simpler term and easier to digest than the full explanation. So I appreciate that. I'm sure everyone in our audience appreciates that. Based on the title of this interview, there are 7 key brain healthy habits that you have defined. Can you please let our audience know what those 7 brain healthy habits include? And also, while you're describing, is one more important than the other? Are they all equally important? Is there one to pay attention more than the other?
Sure, sure. So, I mean, of course, there are more than 7, but at some point you have to decide based on the science which ones seem to be most brain healthy in terms of these habits or behaviors that anyone can do. So I don't want anyone in the audience to think, well, wait a minute, I heard of this or that, and that's not one of the 7. So these 7 are based on the best science available, right? So I'll describe the 7 and we can talk about it. And maybe you'll have some specific questions as we go through them that you think the audience might find helpful. And some are very obvious, I'm sure everyone knows, and maybe some are a little less obvious. And maybe some of the brain healthy behaviors are important for reasons that not everyone thinks about. So I'll try to kind of highlight what's important about them. And so I start with the most basic one that I'm sure everyone would understand, and that's physical exercise. Moving your body is very important, not just for your heart, not just for your body, but also for your mind, for your brain. And that's because cardiovascular health, right, how your heart and your lungs work, have such a dramatic impact on brain function. You know, when we think about Alzheimer's disease, which is a disease, we don't always think about it as likely a vascular disease, but it probably is at some level too. So moving your body doesn't mean you have to join a gym, doesn't mean that you have to work out an hour every day. Actually, if you can move your body for 10 or 15 minutes every day, and if you can just get up from sitting, you know, from a sitting position every hour, just to stretch, move around, that's sufficient for brain health. Second, I'll talk about is cognitive exercises, brain healthy cognitive exercises. This is a little bit harder to unpack, Abby, because not everything counts. And one way I think for people to understand this is that our brains have between roughly 80 and 100 billion neurons or brain cells. These brain cells work as groups, right, as neurocircuits. Try not to get too technical. If I get too technical, just say,
I'll hold
remember
up
your
my
book is
hand.
supposed to not be technical. Yeah. So they work as circuits, and memory relies on certain circuits, neurons working together in a cooperative way. So there are specific exercises that encourage those neurons to work together, even if they haven't worked together before. The technical term for that is called neuroplasticity. I bet a lot of people have heard of that. And that's when you do very specific exercises that more or less force your brain or those neurons to work in very unique ways. So when we say cognitive exercises, it isn't, you know, every word search or any crossword puzzle or any Wordle or anything like that. It's got to demonstrate that it actually recruits these neurons in the right kind of circuits. So one category of exercises people may have heard of are called working memory exercises. And at the BCAT Research Center, spent a lot of time trying to develop evidence-based, you know, exercises that have some science to improve brain health. So that's the second one, and that would be working memory cognitive exercises. The third brain healthy behavior may surprise some, and we refer to it as centered breathing or meditation, but specific in this way. It must involve diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing, deep breathing. And that's so important because what that does naturally, without having to take any medication or anything like that, that promotes what's called parasympathetic or calming central nervous system functioning. It's very good for the microbiota in the gut. It produces serotonin, which is a kind of a happy or wellness a neurotransmitter, but it's protective of the hippocampus and the limbic system, which is important in memory. Did you know that when you are chronically stressed, your body naturally releases stress hormones like cortisol and many others, and they can become almost corrosive for the hippocampus. So I don't want anyone who sees themselves, who's listening, as an anxious person to think, oh my gosh, you know, my brain is under assault. But I would like you instead to think meditation, it's immediate, it's instant. You only have to do it for a few minutes at a time. And we really recommend through that 15 for Me app that I know a lot of people use, very specific meditations. 5 minutes is great. Just do it every day. And when you're feeling stressed, just do some deep breathing. So that's the third one. The fourth one is as important as any, and that is sleep. And sleep might be the most misunderstood, I'm going to call it a healthy habit. One of the most misunderstood healthy habits there is. There are all kinds of misconceptions. You've probably heard this one, Abby, that as we get older, we require less sleep.
I have heard that.
Not true. As we get older, we get less sleep, and that's often because, you know, we're in pain or we're in discomfort or any number of things are going on. But sleep is so important because during sleep you have different stages, and in what's called stage 3 or slow wave sleep, that's where the basic brain housekeeping functions occur. That's where we clear those toxins that are associated with Alzheimer's disease, like beta amyloid, maybe tau, things of that sort. And so it's really important that we get 7 to 8 hours of good sleep. So I would prioritize sleep. It's really very important. The next healthy habit I'd like to talk about is diet. And I think diet is not always about what you add, but often what you can subtract. So I mean, clearly we want to subtract high salt, high fat, high sugar foods. And that's because of all the things that they produce, like diabetes, for example, or cardiovascular issues. Because diabetes and cardiovascular disease, those are risk factors for dementia and other kinds of cognitive problems. Sure, there are things that we can add, leafy vegetables, things of that sort, the right kinds of nuts. Some controversy about a glass of wine, if it has the right kind of substances that may be in some ways buffering of memory. We use something called the MIND diet. We recommend that at the Brain Health and Psychiatry Center, which really focuses a lot on these brain healthy behaviors in Maryland, and it's also done through telehealth in other states. So the MIND diet is not our diet. It's just a recognized diet that combines a Mediterranean diet with a heart healthy diet. Generally speaking, Abby, if you're eating for your heart in a healthy way, you're probably eating for your brain in a healthy way. The sixth and seventh ones that we recommend, I mean, the sixth one is social engagement. It's different depending on how social you are, but I think the first study that I ever published looked at the role of social support in mitigating or lowering the negative effect of disease. And what I found and what we found was that if you have at least one confidant, the likelihood of you having dementia and other kinds of illnesses went down. So it's one way of managing risk. You know, if you're the type of person that likes to have a lot of people around and you only have one, that's probably not great. But if you are the type of person that's really comfortable with one or two really close friends, it's easier to manage maybe. And remember, for older adults, I mean, for that cohort group, people are more likely to die in their 90s than they are in their 60s or their 50s or their 40s. So you have to be a person who's willing to add to your social network, because certainly it can be subtracted through those kinds of losses. And then finally, enhancing mood or regulating mood. And what I mean specifically is managing anxiety and depression either non-pharmacologically through talking to someone or the other healthy habits, knowing that you're doing healthy things, or taking medications like SSRIs or other medications that people take to regulate mood. Because mood, when a person's chronically depressed or has chronic generalized anxiety disorder or persistent anxiety, that also is a trigger for stress hormones, and they can do their damage. So those are the 7 that we really focus on.
Now, in saying all the 7, I can see how a few of them may go together. You emphasized how sleep was, very important. If there's not enough physical exercise, if their mood is, if they're chronically depressed, or if they're anxious, or if they're eating lots of sugar or caffeine, that could all affect sleep. So, would you characterize one to be the most important, or are they all equally important in achieving, overall brain health?
Well, you're bringing up such a good point, Abby. They're interrelated, almost interdependent. So, a person who, for example, engages in daily physical exercise, because these things should be done on a daily basis, they're more likely to have a better diet, just the way that it goes. And people who have a better diet and who exercise are more likely to sleep more, or sleep better, I should say. So they all are related. So the sum is more, the whole is more than the sum of the parts is really important, I guess is what I would like to say, more important than any one thing. That said, I think that sleep and physical exercise are particularly important because those are 2 things that anyone could work on. And sleep is tricky. Many people are poor historians or informants about sleep. It's kind of hard to say how much you really slept because you may have been asleep through part of it. I remember early in my career reading sleep studies where they asked people who came into the clinics, how much sleep did you get? And then they monitored them, and almost always they got more sleep when they were in the clinic than they did at home. Now, maybe that's an artifact of being in the clinic. I don't really know, but it made one think that maybe we're not great historians. But sleep is tricky too, because we have to ask ourselves the question, if we're not getting good sleep, why are we not? And if we can unpack that, we might discover other things that we could do to improve our brain health.
That makes sense. The intercorrelation and how they're all related, explaining it a little bit further. Overall brain health really seems like it greatly affects everyone, including the older adult. So many of our families tuning in have a loved one that's an aging adult. Can you share with the audience why it's not too late to begin these brain healthy habits, and how anyone at any age can start implementing these brain healthy habits?
I can. There's a particularly simple reason, and it's this: neuroplasticity doesn't have an age limit to it. So the ability to recruit these neurons doesn't have an age limit to it. So you can be 100 or you can be 30 of any age. And if you do certain things, you can improve your brain health. Also, there's a degree of reversibility, particularly for those who don't have dementia. So we have people who come to the Brain Health and Psychiatry Center, and they have a syndrome called MCI, mild cognitive impairment. And part of the evaluation that they get here is that we see how are they doing in terms of these 7 brain healthy behaviors, and we do an extensive neurocognitive, neuropsych battery, and all that sort of thing. And what we've discovered is that they don't have dementia, the people that I'm talking about, those who maybe have a pre-dementia syndrome. But when they start to alter these behaviors, they begin to see improvement in brain health, particularly in memory and what we call the executive skills. So I don't buy the idea that there's a statute of limitations in terms of time. And even people who have, let's say, early stages of dementia can slow that train down. I'm not saying that they can reverse it to a point of normal cognition, but they can certainly do better. So it's never too late to improve your brain health.
Okay. In saying that, often we hear older adults that are resistant to certain lifestyle changes that may affect those healthy habits. Can you help shed some light on some of these statements? I'm just going to read a few and tell me if they are
Mhm.
true or if they are a myth. The first
Okay.
state, okay. The first statement is about anxiety and enhancing mood. So, anxiety is something that won't go away. It has nothing to do with my brain health.
Yeah. So anxiety is usually a focus on the future, not a focus on the present. One of the things that meditation does is that it's all about the present, not about the future. So anxiety is a treatable disorder, sometimes non-medically, sometimes without therapy, the talking therapy, sometimes without medication, sometimes it's with doing brain healthy behavior. So anxiety is subtractive of the quality of our life, subtractive of our brain health. It's a very treatable condition. It can be a self-treated condition for many people. That said, we have loads of people who are persistently anxious. We have ways professionally of treating them, and it's not normal. So suffering can be measured in terms of anxiety. It's one way of measuring suffering. One doesn't have to suffer.
That's helpful. Thank you. The next one, centered breathing, it won't help me at all for those that are resistant to starting.
You know, we have patients with COPD, with chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. Maybe they're even on oxygen. We have lots of people who we've taught, maybe in a modified way, how to do centered breathing. Almost without exception, people feel better afterwards. Centered breathing, because it is physiological and psychological, but primarily physiological, it's impossible to practice diaphragmatic breathing or center breathing without calming the central nervous system. That's just how we do it. It's a naturally occurring thing. So if somebody says, oh, it doesn't work, or it's that new age stuff, it's actually, people have been breathing as long as they've been alive. And what happens when we get stressed is that our breathing becomes shallow. But deep breathing is what we're meant to do. And I think it's not just good medicine, it's just a good lifestyle habit that everyone can embrace.
So it's more so got to get them to try it so they could see the results.
Feels good, yes.
Yep. Okay, last myth or truth. I do crossword puzzles every day, so I don't need to do anything else because I'm already using my brain.
Yeah, there are two problems with that statement, or at least two problems. One is it may be that crossword puzzles don't recruit the right kinds of circuits because they don't always rely on working memory. So that's number one. And number two is it's important when you practice brain health that these criteria are met, Abby. It has to be moderately difficult. It has to be frequent. We're talking about every day, but at least 5 times a week. But it also must be novel because your brain gets used to doing the same thing, and therefore it's no longer doing the same benefit as it was before.
That's why
And
you're not
finally,
getting the recruitment, right?
exactly. And it has to be progressively difficult. You know, we get really good at learning how to do things. So crossword puzzles are great and they're fun, and in no way am I suggesting that people don't do them, but don't confuse them with working memory exercises. They're good for you, and they probably have some cognitive benefit, but they don't have as much cognitive benefit as working memory exercises do. Like for example, the BCAT working memory exercise book, that's gone through research protocols. We know that that works, and that's probably why it's used so often.
Great. Thank you for clearing that up. So I know the BCAT is known for their workbooks, as you just mentioned. There's also a new digital platform. Can you share how these are appropriate for the older adult? I know that there is the choice of a book or on the digital platform. How will this engage in cognitive stimulation? I know you've talked about the neuroplasticity, you've talked about the criteria for improving cognition and for brain health. How could they implement this to impact their overall brain healthy lifestyle?
You know, I would start with a statement, Abby, that people can use whatever they can find as long as there's science behind it. So, we spend a lot of time creating tools that then have to go through protocol to have scientific evidence. The digital platform is relatively new in terms of its availability. It recruits those neurons that are part of working memory and foundational memory. So we already know the science is good. It's been published and peer reviewed and all that. The Working Memory Exercise book is an analog book. It's a workbook. We have a lot of people who don't want to work on a computer. They just like using, a workbook. And so our mission is to try to help brain health for as many people as we can. So that means that we have to offer a workbook, what we think of as an analog, but basically just a kind of a pencil and paper, workbook. And also something that is digital that you can use from a phone or any device, because a lot of people would like to do that. So, certainly on the BCAT website, you can find out about that. And as you are aware, there's the enrichvisits.com website where you can also, find out more about, how to get these tools. And I would just encourage people, it's not just the older adult who's already experiencing some memory problems. I think it's trying to support people 3 decades earlier who have risk factors. Remember, for Alzheimer's disease, the telltale, neurofibrillary tangles and plaques, they begin 20, 30 years before any symptoms occur. So I think that if you're in your 40s, you need to be doing brain healthy exercises to protect yourself when you get to your 70s.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for one more question.
Okay.
Brain health there's a lot there. Is there any tools that you can recommend to help measure brain health, to help with the families listening in to get their loved ones started on what to do next?
There's a free non-medical tool. We call it the Enrich Calculator that anyone can do. It measures 6 brain healthy behaviors. They're not all these 7, because some of them are metabolic or medical, like blood pressure and so forth. It's really easy to do. Just go to enrichvisits.com. You don't have to sign up for anything. You don't have to put your name. There's no credit card or anything like that. And it tells you a little bit about risk factors. Now, it's just a beginning point, right? And you can get a report and you can share it, with your doctor. So that's one option. The other option, which is increasingly popular, is not a risk variable, assessment like the Enrich calculator, but it's a self-assessment, a cognitive self-assessment called My Mem Check. It's also free and it's on the same website, enrichvisits.com. We created that so that anyone in the privacy of their home can do a cognitive self-assessment. It's not diagnostic. It's not like you're coming to Counterpoint or the Brain Health and Psychiatry Center. But that too has good science. It generates a report that can be shared with a primary care physician, with other family members. So My Mem Check is it's just one of those really helpful tools that's based on really good science. So if you want to know kind of cognitively where am I, use My Mem Check. If you want to know, am I practicing brain healthy behaviors, do the Enrich Calculator.
Thank you. That's a great place to get started. Dr. Mansbach, thank you so much for taking the time to share with our families all of your knowledge and expertise. I'm sure our families really value your input on this topic. And thank you everyone for joining us. Stay tuned for our next Family Matters episode. Bye-bye.